So hello, Mark, and thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. This is our inaugural edition of a series of interviews we'd like to do meeting the advisory board of the Flip Learning Network for our new Flip Learning Today digital newsletter. So why don't we get started by you telling us a bit about your background as a teacher?
Sure, Kelly, no problem. And thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure to do this. It's an honor to be one of the first people to do one of these interviews. So I'm Marc Seigel. I currently teach in Middletown High School South, which is in Middletown, New Jersey. It sits right at the top of the Jersey Shore. I've been teaching chemistry for 17 years at a variety of schools. I've also been a director of instruction for math, science, and agriculture for a little while in all of that. And then I'm kind of a jack of all trades when it comes to my school. I run our TED Ed Club program. So that's a club that's run through TED Ed, and we were one of the first 25 in the world, which is an amazing honor as well.
Yeah, that's neat.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's just such an amazing experience working with these kids because it's allowing kids to express their ideas and work on ideas that they are passionate about that have nothing to do with the classroom.
Fantastic.
It's amazing. I'm also the Relay for Life advisor. I'm the tech integration coach. I run our makerspace. I just do a little bit of everything.
Wow, you're a busy guy. So many of our advisory board members were early adopters of Flip Learning. How did you first come across this idea and what compelled you to try it?
So it was, I will never forget this because people always ask, how did where did it first come from? And I was in my 10th year of teaching. It was in the fall of 2010. And I said when I was doing my student teaching that there was a moment where I was in the middle of a lesson and my cooperating teacher storms into the classroom because she used to just leave me alone. So she storms into the classroom, goes, "You got to stop." She goes up to the shelf behind where I was teaching and pulls a binder like this thick off the shelf and says, "The principal is checking lesson plans today." She goes, "What are you teaching?" She flips to the unit that I was teaching, erases the date from 7 years prior, writes the current date on the top and throws the binder back on the shelf and said, "If he comes around, show him that." And I said in my own head, if I ever get to that point, I either need to radically change what I'm doing or I need to retire on the spot.
Wow.
So fast forward 10 years, I walk in on a Monday morning, and on that year, I wasn't teaching block one, that first period. And I go, "Oh yeah, what are we doing today? Gas laws? Flip, flip, flip." Now, for me, it was virtual flip because I was using PowerPoints at that time. And I just scrolled to the PowerPoint that I was going to be using that day. I didn't think about teaching all weekend long. I didn't think about my lesson plan. I didn't think about anything. I had gotten so practiced that I could just do it right off the top of my head. And I stopped, dead stop, and went, "Whoa, what just happened?" And about a month later, I run across this article. I think it was in the NSTA magazine or in the newspaper, and it was by John and Aaron, who is talking about using video for instruction. And at that point, that was the fall after they had done it for 1 year. And their purpose of doing it was they had so many athletes who were missing class time because of where the school was located that the videos were a way of getting those kids to stay up with class instead of because they were missing so much. And I looked at this and I said, I could totally do this. Went to my supervisor. I pitched him the idea. He was really hesitant about it. And I said, "Look, let me do it on a trial basis. I want to do this one unit. Let's see how it goes for one unit. If it flops, I'll go right back to the instruction that I was doing before." He said, "Okay, you can try it one time." So I did it. I was teaching honors. I only did it with my honors classes, not with my college prep class. And we got to the end of the unit, and I think it was writing reactions actually that I did it with. And I went back the following unit to standard direct instruction, stand in front of the classroom and still teaching off the same PowerPoints. And the kids were one day, and they're like, "Yeah, we need to go back to the old way, that other way. This is not working for us," because the flexibility allowed in the classroom was the first time they had ever seen that, and they loved it. They loved the idea of being able to do something for 2 days instead of only doing it for one because they needed that extra time to learn it and practice it and do all that stuff. And so went to my supervisor. I said, "Third marking period, I'm not direct instructing anymore. I spent Christmas break and the next month like making videos like a madman. And I always felt like I was one day ahead of the kids. It was like my first year teaching all over again. Started flipping full time in the third marking period and just kept going all the way through to the end of the year. And that was my first real jump into the flip learning process.
Wow. It's interesting. So even today, when flip learning's been around a lot and most teachers have heard of it, certainly many, and it's really becoming kind of a global movement, there's still so many situations in which I'll talk to a teacher and they'll say, I'm the only one in my school. So you were certainly in that position. I was going to ask, do you feel like being an early adopter made it harder or not? But the way you explain it, it just worked for you.
Well, I've always been an early adopter in my school. Like when I first started teaching and we started getting projectors in the classroom, I was the first one with a projector. When we got a document camera, I was the first one with a document camera. There were all sorts of things where I've always been the one that says, I'll try it. That's me. And still to this day. So this was just changing my entire method as opposed to just integrating one piece of technology.
Well, there you go. Sounds like you've got the innovator's mindset. We're reading that book right now in a book club that the Flip Learning Network started.
Yes.
So, being an early adopter, you probably faced, one of the challenges that's going away gradually, but it's always good to talk about a bit because a lot of teachers will throw this out as the access. So did you have challenges with students being able to access the flipped content?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's always a lot of challenges with anything you do when it's a massive change. I mean, video is one thing, but even when I started to remove homeworks from the classroom and change everything to be asynchronous, I faced challenges with the kids and how they changed their own mindset in the classroom. But yeah, when I first started flipping, I think my classroom they had those Dell Minis. It was like the first time to make laptop computers accessible in classrooms. So the computer was like this big. It was like a 60% computer. And we're trying to watch these videos and the kids are like, it's almost our phones now are about the same size as what it used to be.
Wow.
And I had 6 of them for a class of 24. So it was like, okay, so how do I do this? So I bought headphone splitters and a lot of my students at that point just watched the videos at home. So I tried a variety of different things. We had a learning management system. We used Moodle. So I put a lot of my videos on the program Moodle. And so at that time, students would watch the videos at home for homework. There were still some who didn't have access. I had a kid who was a huge soccer player. I mean, he played soccer 12 months a year. Multiple travel leagues, everything. And he did not have time at home to do homework. He very often would arrive home at between 10 and 11 o'clock at night from whatever he was doing, and then start his homework. And this was a sophomore in high school who was going through this. So it was like the high school practice would be finished, and then he'd jump on a bus and get on his travel soccer team. So the kid was exhausted on top of coming home late. And so he would watch the videos in class. But other kids said, I want to do the homeworks in class. I want to do the quizzes in class. So I am going to watch the videos at home. And they would come like that. The soccer player's mother wrote me a letter during the third marking period thanking me. She goes, my son had not watched TV in over a year because he never had time. She goes, this weekend, he got to watch TV like a normal teenager could because of how the flip learning had had restructured the classroom. So in that beginning time, yeah, I just kind of made it work. I redesigned things. Now all my videos are much shorter. Very rarely do my kids watch the videos at home because, they went from being 15 minutes to only 6 minutes. And I found I listened to the kids and I said, okay, some kids say, I just want the notes portion. Some kids say, I can learn it from the examples. So everything is divided up based on what my kids tell me they need each year.
So it sounds like you don't have nearly as much homework per se, even, so the traditional flip says you push the content outside of the classroom, you do the homework in the classroom, but you just mentioned that not a lot of your kids even have to watch the videos at home necessarily. What are they doing outside of class for your class? Is it just kind of their choice what they need to bone up on, or?
I try to make things, anytime I assign a true work to be done at home assignment and as opposed to homework is, it's about finding chemistry in the world around them. So, in the second half of the year, the chemistry is very real world. So we're doing solution making and we're doing gas laws and we're doing reactions involving heat. So these are things where their assignment for Thanksgiving weekend is find an example of a chemical reaction occurring in the world around you. That may be in your kitchen, that may be in a restaurant, or whatever it's going to be. Christmas break, I involve chemistry in Christmas or whatever the holiday is that you celebrate over winter break, or anything that you're doing over winter break. It doesn't even matter if you're religious. Now that it's starting to get nice, we start talking about balloons and solutions, and like, okay, why is there salt on the roads, and why is my car getting rusted? And so I tell them to go out and take pictures of these things, or find them, or Snapchat them, or Instagram, whatever it's going to be. And I tell them to post these things for everyone to see, not just me. Because that is what chemistry really is. It's examining the world, the chemical world. So I want them out doing that. Problem sets, worksheets, I want them doing that in class, because I want to see if they truly understand it. Kids today cheat more often than they do the work themselves. And I watch it all the time, but they always cheat in the same way. And it's when they don't find meaning in the assignment. My kids can't cheat on my work to be done at home, because it has to involve their face. Like they have to show themselves doing the chemistry at home. So I try to, like everything else, my worksheets are not a whole page. They're 3 problems. I want to see them. I want to give them feedback immediately. Kids bring them up to me. I show them exactly what they did wrong. I reteach it to them correctly, and I give it right back to them, and then give them another assignment and another assignment and another assignment. Reinforce the skills right there where I am, instead of at home where they can just call their friend and say, hey, do you have homework?
Right. Excellent. So you mentioned Moodle. So hearing about Moodle being used in a high school sounds a bit innovative and ahead of the game. Do you feel that your environment where you're teaching is very supportive of this kind of your unique approaches, or is that really just you? I'm just looking for that. Was there a relationship with you feeling supported to try these things, or did you just go for it on your own? Or
Well, the school I was at with Moodle, the school pushed the Moodle, not me. I had never used Moodle before I walked into that school, and I just fell in love with it. But in the school I'm at now, we're now using Google Classroom. We're a Google Apps for Education district. When I got to the school, they were not innovative. I remember very distinctly, I walked in the building, and the first thing I saw was a sign, about yay big, that had a kid with a hood with his hands like this on a desk. And there was a no cell phone, no headphones, no hoods. Like that was the first message that was sent to the school. And I walked in there for the interview, and I saw this, and I go, if I get this job, that's the first thing that's going to change about this building. Because like I couldn't, where I was, and I was trying to do something innovative, I couldn't come to a place and say, there can't be no, no, no. And I didn't try to change the mindset of integrate. You have to integrate cell phones. You have to. It wasn't about that. It was removing the word no. Like there's ways to say things without saying no. So I wanted them to just change the mindset of let's stop telling the kids no, and let's find something else to do it. So when I first got to the school, I went to the principal. I introduced myself. I said, here's what I do. Here's why I do it. When I got hired, the first thing I did was a QR code scavenger hunt sent all around the school that required the use of cell phones. Now, this is 6 years ago. So we were still a no cell phone district, no Google Apps really being used. And I had to write special laminated passes for my kids to carry with them at all times. They still got in trouble with people all over the place, but they were doing a QR code scavenger hunt for chemistry that would lead them to a spot. They would have to take pictures of chemistry in the world around them. And I remember getting called down to the main office because a kid got written up because he took a picture of an aluminum can that was in the recycling bin in his math class. And because he pulled out his cell phone, he got written up. And I went down and I defended the kid, and I said, he's got a pass, he's got everything, this was all approved. Slowly but surely, everything changed. Now there are cell phones being used in almost every single classroom. We're Google Apps for Education district. We've got we're one-to-one Chromebooks. So much has been changed, but it required a shift in the mindset. And I went with a lot of colleagues, and they're like, no, you can't do that. And now, yeah, they're doing that. Like it just takes time. I always say it's like chipping at an iceberg. For all you out there who are just starting, think of it like an iceberg. You just got to chip a little bit each day, a little bit each year. You get one more person here and one more person there who jumps on and says, hey, I may not flip, but you're right. Homework has to change. Worksheets need to change. Something needs to change. And you get 2 people a year, 3 people a year, and all of a sudden they get 3 people, and 3 and 3 and 3. And all of a sudden now that vocal majority, which was saying no, 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 is now the very silent minority, because there's so many people who are vocally going, yes, 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 we can make this happen.
That's fantastic. I was going to ask about, getting others on board, but you speak so well to how that happened, and I love that analogy of chipping away at the iceberg. Do you get involved in helping to support other teachers with tools and techniques on a regular basis?
Yeah, I've actually been fighting it for a while, and this year was the first chance I got to do it. So I'm half-time chemistry, half-time technology integration specialist.
Okay.
So I do a lot of things. Like I also do our makerspace and a variety of things like that too. But that job came from me going to my principal every year going, we need someone to talk about technology more. Last year I started running these, what I was calling learning lunch labs. It's when I first got to the school, I was so used to, I wanted to change things. I've always been a change maker and I love doing that. So I was at lunch. It was like in the first 6 months of getting the job. And I said to the people we were eating lunch with, what would be great is if we all brought an idea to the table and we discussed like new ideas for our classroom. And they all looked at me and said, we will not have learning lunches. And that was it. It was like, shut down. I was like, got it. Cool. So now we have learning lunch labs in my school. So again, like it takes time. That took 5 years for me to shift the mindset. And now we offer professional development during lunch and advisory. So anyone who has a duty or is free, we offer up the topics in advance. This coming week, I'm offering of videos for homework session during lunch. You bring your lunch, you get an hour of professional development, even though it's only about 45 minutes in actual length. And we have it's small group. It's usually like 8 or 9 people who show up, but we do everything, like we're doing social media. We just did a digital formative assessments. We've done Google versus Microsoft. We've done all these things based around the needs that we've seen of the staff. They said I listen to them and they say, it'd be great if someone did a session on whatever. And I'm like, I'll figure out a way to do that. And that's part of my job is, making that all happen. And then I leave that and go running across the school and jump into my classroom and start teaching Chem. So it's kind of like that back and forth, in my job. But that's the kind of thing that more and more schools need is getting people into classrooms, doing training that is meaningful for the staff. But all the time I get a text message that says, I need you. And they're in the middle of a lesson and Google Classroom is not working the way they want it to. And I jump in and I say, okay, let's fix this on the fly and like get the kids and boom, now they get back in there. And I love it. That's my favorite part of my job right now.
Excellent. So in terms of making videos, any favorite tools?
Oh, I'm all about TechSmith. I am not to pitch them. They don't, I love them. I love their company and I love their products. So right now I'm using a Microsoft Surface. So for my lessons, but I've always been using a tablet PC. And the benefit of that is you can write right on the screen. So I'll use Microsoft PowerPoint as my, set up all my lectures, my notes, and then I just use the inking tool. Camtasia records the whole screen for me, or if I'm doing something real quick on the fly, something that's short that doesn't need to be edited, I'll just use Snagit. And Snagit just record whatever part of the screen I want, run a problem real fast, save it, dump it to my YouTube channel, and it's so fast. But if I'm doing something longer and more involved, then I'm using Camtasia Studio. There's tons of fancy features that I don't use, and I wish that I could have the time to sit down and transitions and sound effects. I'm like, whatever. I don't got that. There are tons of flip people out there who do that. There are some amazing videos. I tell my kids from day one, I'm going to sneeze in mine. There's one video where my cat is meowing in the background. We got a clock chiming somewhere. I'm like, it's just part of the process. And I think my students like that better because they've actually made comments. They'll say to me, who made your video? I'm like, I made my video. This one specifically, because you didn't sneeze or anything in that video. That was the one where I spent time editing it. But sometimes they like the down and dirty raw video because that's who you are in the classroom. Yeah. I'm going to sneeze in a lesson. So what's the difference then if I'm just doing it in a video?
Yeah, great advice. Just, don't get crazy trying to spend a lot of time polishing it. Be you, be yourself. So that's fantastic stuff.
And actually, I want to speak to that too. You talked about being an island. I've always been an island. And then recently some of my staff members my colleagues are starting to flip their lessons, but they're not making their own videos. And that's okay. But I'm seeing a disconnect with my students who have both of us, and they go, why is your flip classroom so different from their flip classroom? And I said, number one, that's how it's intended to be. That's the beauty of the flip design, is it doesn't have to be the same. But the second is they find meaning in using someone else's videos. I make all my own stuff, all my own material. So like, you don't have to always be, oh, I'm tech savvy. I'm not tech savvy. I can't make my own videos. That's okay. There's thousands of educators out there who have videos that will work. Use theirs. Use whatever material is going to work for you.
Yeah, I try, it's interesting. I remember having seen a few student panels where it did come out that when that there's a line to walk there that we got to be careful with, because sometimes some students will see that as the teacher almost cheating in a way. And what I like to advocate, excuse me, is if you're not going to create your own videos, which is fine, do what you can to bring your voice to the process. Right. So, if you get into, maybe you use ted.ed.com or you use Edpuzzle or something where you're not only inserting questions or putting things in there that help with engagement and requiring engagement, but you have an opportunity to bring, literally your words and your perspective somehow to the video. What are your thoughts on that?
I absolutely agree with that. And that's one of the first, that's going to be the thing that I'm going to say on Wednesday is, you have to put your own personality into whatever you're doing. I was at, I forget which conference I was at, but a math teacher walked up to me and said, I tried flipping for the first time this year. I'm like, fantastic. How did it go? She goes, I hated it. It was horrible. I started going off and yelling at it. I'm like, wait, how did you do it? And so she tells me that there's this great college professor, and it was not to pick on math class, but that's where it typically comes in. But it was this fantastic college math professor whose lectures are amazing. And I go, oh, how did that align to your high school math class? Which was like, well, they didn't always line up, and his lectures are an hour long, but my class is only this length. So what she was doing was she was posting the link to this guy's video, and then underneath it, the instructions were watch from 5 minutes and 13 seconds to 10 minutes and 42 seconds. Then fast forward, and like you might as well have just made your own video. If you're going to go through the time of watching an hour-long lecture and writing down the time frames that your kid's going to do, like you might as well have just recorded it yourself. But second, the kids her comment was the kids hated the video. And I said, of course they hated the video. It wasn't you. It wasn't your class. And they knew immediately that you were cheating the system. You were using someone else's work and then just modifying it. Like if you're going to do that, like you said, pick questions, like put it into whatever, an Edpuzzle, a Google form, whatever it's going to be, have them watch, put questions underneath it to show that you are looking at this video, analyzing the teaching that's there, and then measuring the kids' learning based on that teaching. Like make it meaningful for the kids that this is going to connect back to your classroom in a very direct way.
Excellent. You mentioned something about Wednesday. You got something coming up?
Yes, I'm sorry. So I'm doing a lunch session on using videos for homework.
Right. Yep.
Which is tough because I don't give homework. So it's like this back and forth, but I have a lot of staff members who are saying like, I'm running out of time. I need to do more meaningful stuff in my classroom, and I'm using that meaningful time, that face time, by lecturing. How do I get more meaningful things done in class, especially with the AP teachers? AP teachers all the time are telling me, I'm running out of time. I need to do more problem sets. And I said, this is the best opportunity. Create those short lessons, give it for homework the night before, the kids watch it, they come to class, and then you start with an example problems, with the AP level problems, instead of let's show the basic problem, let's show the medium level problem, and then, because you're spending 40 minutes going over basic stuff when you need to be doing AP level work. So give those lectures, those short stuff for homework, and then come to class with ready to go and to start your work.
Great. There seems to be this tendency that math and science are the first or are a very natural fit for the flipped classroom. But what about other subjects? Are you working with other teachers who are flipping or even, blending using digital tools in interesting ways outside of math and science?
Yeah, absolutely. Math and science works really well in this because we're very process driven. You know, it's like step A, do this, step B, do that, so on and so forth. But my wife is a social studies teacher, and so she does a modified flip in her classroom. And what she has always said is by putting the basic lectures on video and having the kids watch, and her videos are a little bit longer because it takes a longer time to explain a process. What she's allowed to do is she does more projects in her class now. She does more meaningful application of the work. And I was speaking to a social studies teacher from California, and he said his biggest thing about when he first started to flip is that exact thing. By putting the more basic topics into videos to watch at home, he was now able to jump into class and doing meaningful discussions, critical thinking questions, and all that. But when you are in a lecture-based class, or a very content-driven class, like a social studies or an English classroom, the teacher has to spend so much time explaining the material that there's not enough time for you to truly process it in your brain to make a nice critical analysis. So by giving the basic material at home, the kids have had 12 hours or whatever to process that, and they can walk in with a good analysis. But again, connected to that, and what my wife and I work on is when she does it, very much like a TED Ed lesson, she posts the video and she posts the 3 analysis questions, the 3 discussion questions that she's going to start class with. So the kids already know exactly what they need to come to class with. And then it's right off the bat. You're in groups. Here's what I want you to do. Here's question 1. Here's question 2. Here's let's break it down. I'm going to rotate you through. Then I'm going to bring it back, class discussion. Now let's take those topics and bring it to a project. How are we going to, let's analyze a war. Let's analyze a political decision. Let's analyze a constitutional amendment. It's analysis in class as opposed to sit and listen to me talk.
Fantastic. Yeah, and that's just such a great example of how it can really change what you're doing in the class and open things up. A question from a whole different angle. When you start a new class, how do you kind of indoctrinate your students, get them on board with what you're doing? And do you also try to communicate with parents at all about what's going on?
So I tell everyone all the time, like, if you're going to start, regardless of how you start, Brian Bennett is fantastic. He talks about jumping, 2 feet in from day one, and I am not that guy. I cannot start flipping on day one with my students. My school district just happens to be, while we do a lot of innovative things, there is a traditional mindset of parents and kids that they walk into class. Kids have already predetermined whether or not they're going to like chemistry before they walk in based on what their parents told them. So oh God, I hate chemistry. And I always get that at back to school night. Oh, my chemistry teacher, he blew so many cool things up. And I'm like, what? I don't know. I just remember fire. Or the reverse is, oh God, you teach chemistry? And it's like they sucked on a lemon all of a sudden. So a lot of kids come in with a preconceived notion of what this class is going to be like. So I don't start with flip videos from day one. I start by changing the mindset of what the classroom is going to look like. So my classroom is in pods. I have innovative seating. I have, bungee chairs and yoga mats and a whole bunch of things as options. But I also have desks because some kids like desks. But also there are some kids who like to go off in the corner and sit in an office chair and be by themselves. So I have one class, 24 students, 23 of them are at desks, and one kid has his own little corner back in the corner lab bench that he just works very quietly all by himself. He gets up and moves to other people when he wants to, but he loves his little corner of the room. I had one group where there were these 3 girls who would camp out underneath my lab benches. And the lab benches, my 9-year-old has a hard time fitting underneath them. And there are these 3 high school girls who cram themselves in there, and they would set up their Chromebook to watch the video, and they loved it. They said, it's like a movie theater. A little bit darker in there. I've had some set up on their bungee chairs, and they lay everything out. The whole point is, this is not your father's chemistry class. That kind of idea. There's going to be different. So I start there. All my labs are digital. I do very, very little paper. I have photocopied less than 1,000 sheets of paper so far this school year, and we are, 6 months through. So, and I'm hoping to keep it under 2,000 for the year. I very rarely hit the photocopier. So that's, again, the kids are like, well, do I need a binder? No, you don't. You don't need a binder. You don't need a notebook. Everything is digital. Everything as much as possible, wherever it's going to be. So I shift mindset first. Okay, now we're going to do inquiry. So now let's start doing inquiry assignments. Why are we doing it this way? Because not everything's going to be today you're going to do this, and tomorrow you're going to do that, because I run an asynchronous flipped classroom. So the fast kids can go fast and the slow kids can go slow, and everyone gets what they need from me. Hopefully, that's the goal. It's not until late first marking period, beginning of the second marking period, that I start to do TED Ed videos with the kids. And my favorite one is actually John Bergman's How Small is the Atom? It's assigned for homework, and they watch it. It's 5 minutes long, and it's a cartoon. And then the first thing we do when we walk into class is we discuss it. What'd you think? Tell me what you remember from the video. And they talk about that. I'm like, okay, give me a perspective. How small is the atom? And they try and translate it. I'm like, and then I talk about things and then we go into, because they already know what a proton, neutron, electron is. They don't need me to tell them again. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about like meaningful material. And then as the marking period goes on, okay, you're going to watch this video and you're going to take notes on it. And then we're going to talk about it in class. We're going to do this. And I slowly but surely, by the end of the first unit of the second marking period, we're into a full flip. It's videos when you need to watch them. I have some students who will sit down on a weekend and watch the entire unit's worth of videos in one shot and then come in and just pound through work. I have other kids who come into class, watch a video, do an assignment, watch a video, do an assignment. I let them structure it how they want to work.
You've certainly incorporated the idea of the flexible environment, right? You've probably seen our definition of the 4 pillars, and for the F, we talk about a flexible environment, and fun too, because I want to take your class. It sounds like a good time. So that idea of kids moving at a different pace, which can be very challenging for teachers to kind of embrace. Do you have students who are really far ahead of the curve, and what do you do to keep them engaged when they're, they've mastered the material?
So when I first started flipping, everyone was at the same point all the time. Yeah. The first day of the unit was this, the last day of the unit is that, and that's it. Everything has to be handed in that time frame. It's been 7 years now of flipping that I have gone to I'm much more comfortable with an asynchronous environment. But again, it's based on the students too, and what they do each year. So it's hard to describe. So when you are in a classroom where you're told what to do every day, and you are a kid who doesn't have a passion for science or math, but you have an aptitude in science or math, you get bored really, really, really fast, because you look around you going, how can these kids not understand what the teacher just said? But you can't go any faster because the teacher won't let you go any faster. This allows for that group of kids to move a little bit more at their own pace. There are other kids who have the exact opposite. They look around the room and think they're stupid because they look at everyone else working and they don't have a clue what that teacher just said. That kid also now can ask me extra questions because I'm not standing in the front of the room taking up 25 or 30 minutes of their time. I'm saying, hello, here's your do now, here's what I want you to do, this is your job for the day, go to it. And then what I've done is I've adjusted different policies in class to support both sets of learners. So because again, I'm process driven, not content driven. So I have 4 versions of every quiz, homework, and test available for my students. So they can do up to 4 versions of any one assignment. Now I actually have 12 versions because to reduce the cheating down. So quizzes are 1 question. They're worth 5 points. Why does a quiz need to ask the same thing 4 different ways? I asked the question once. All the quizzes use the same process. Again, it's process. So if it's a molarity question, every kid is given they solve then whatever they need to solve that particular question. That's the quiz. They can do up to 4 versions of that quiz. So even though it's only 1 question, they can do up to 4. So they get that extra reinforcement. So I have some students who say, I like the practice. And they do 4 of everything. I have one girl who does 4 quizzes for 4 versions for each quiz, homework. So she has like 65 grades for the marking period. I'm not exaggerating. Like her thing goes like pages long. And I've got other kids who are going, no, I'm going to do the bare minimum. And they do 1 for each of the required assignments. I also throw in required and optional assignments. So everyone has to do at least 1 quiz, 1 homework, 1 test. Then I might have a quiz 2 version. So I have a quiz 1 and then a quiz 2. They both have 4 versions. Quiz 2 is optional. but quiz 2 helps you for the homework. So if you didn't do quiz 2, it's not that you can't do the homework, you just don't have the reinforcement that you need to be successful in the homework. So the homework's going to take you a little bit longer. If you don't do quiz 2, doesn't mean you can't do the test. It's just that you'll be better prepared for the test. So the kids can structure it based on what they feel they need. But I have a kid right now who's got a 97 in my class. He does one of everything. That's it. That he's got it. And then he sits there. He walks in the class and he goes, can I start the quiz immediately? I said, wait till I'm done with my little spiel. I finish my spiel. He walks up to my desk, grabs his quiz, sits down, does the quiz, turns it back in. He gets a 5 out of 5. He knows exactly what he knows. And then he sits down and watches a video like Netflix. But that's what he does.
Wow.
And he does everything on the day it's due. And he does a test. And he has a 97 in my class. What should I say to this kid? No, you have to do more. Why?
No.
He proved that he can do it. So why should I force kids to do problems when they don't need it? Now, other kids, I push multiple versions on them because I said, look, it took you 40 minutes to do one question on a quiz. Maybe you want to do a second version or a third version before moving on to the next assignment. And I highly encourage, but I don't force it on them to do those. And some of those kids will do it, and some of those kids won't. And then any kid who falls behind has to come in outside of class time to get their work done. So we use Power School as our grading program. As soon as that assignment comes due, they get a 0 in Power School. When they hand in the assignment, I change the grade to whatever they earned, and then they get it. But if they don't get it done on the due date, that means they're going to have to come in outside of class time to catch back up with the rest of the class.
Gotcha. So it sounds like you've done a fair amount, it's probably taken a good amount of time to build up all that content and the different quizzes and the whole approach.
It's a lot of failure, a lot of failures. There's a lot of lessons where I'm like, nope, stop. This is not working. Mid-lesson, like midstream, I'm like, okay, you guys go work on this. I'm going to go over to this corner and re-record that video. Or I'm like, okay, so I used to give those quizzes that had 5 questions. It was too much to do. I said, why am I making them? Let's just cut them all in half. All of those kinds of things are just, and I'll do it from unit to unit. I adjust every unit every year so that it changes a little bit based on the needs of those particular kids. Gotcha.
Well, you've already given a lot of good ideas and good advice. Any particular, words of wisdom for somebody getting started with this that we may not have hit on?
Yeah, I wish I could say this diplomatically, but laziness is the key to failure in the flipped classroom. So if you're just like, well, no, I'm not going to do this. No, I don't feel like making my own thing, or no, I can't modify. No, this is not about that. Like I work like a first-year teacher every year, and I love it. I come to class energized. I come to school energized because my lessons are fresh in my head. My teaching is fresh in my head. I don't remake my videos every year. I've got videos from 2014 that are still up there. They work. There's no reason to change them. There are other videos where, we changed topics or we changed order for the curriculum this year. So the thing that I reference in the video, I haven't taught them yet. So some videos are made from year to year. Sometimes we make tests from year to year because the kids say that last test was too hard. I'm like, okay, they're not thinking the way they did last year. Let's change up how I ask these questions. So you have to be willing to experiment. You have to be willing to fall on your face a couple times. You have to be willing to say, I'm sorry, I thought that would work. That didn't work. Let's try it differently in the next unit. You have to constantly be trying to remake. And when you do that, your kids will jump through any hoop you give them. They will work harder. They will do more for you. Even the kids who are trouble. I had a kid with ADD and Asperger's in my class, and I was the only teacher who gave him even a B that year because there was 0 discipline problems with him. He loved the class. He knew I was working for him. He knew there wasn't just me pulling out a file and just throwing whatever I wanted at him. He did exactly what he needed to do because he worked harder for me because he knew I was working harder for him. That's the thing I always tell my kids. I bring 100% every day. I expect you to bring 100% every day. That's the biggest thing. And then the second one is don't listen to the naysayers. Like there's going to be a lot of people who are like, why are you doing that? Ignore them. You've got this. You're doing what's in the best interest of your kids in what you feel is right in your heart. Stick with it. You're doing the right thing.
Yeah, especially the somebody, I forget where I heard the phrase, but the cave people, colleagues against virtually everything, right? But well, I love your passion, and I'm sure your students must too. Sounds like you're constantly learning, which is right. If we can't model lifelong learning, how are we going to inspire our students to do the same?
Absolutely.
What's coming down the pike for you? Anything in particular that you're working on now that's exciting, or changes you want to make?
In my classroom,
Yeah.
there's always something new, trying different. So, and it's perfectly okay to do direct instruction. I'm telling people now that I know people. So I just did solutions, and we're going into a topic called intermolecular forces. And I love this topic because we make lava lamps in class.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very elementary school activity. I actually got it off of Scholastic Sci-Flix, and the kids love it. They think it's fantastic, but it's a full-on 80-minute direct instruction lesson because I have to walk the kids through the steps, and we talk about what are you observing, what are you doing, where's the chemistry in this. So I just went from a full asynchronous flip lesson to next week I'm doing a full direct instruction lesson, but it has a different mindset of it's all part of this inquiry approach. Let's put in a drop. What happens if I put in 2 drops? What happens if I use this much oil? What happens? So it's still that mindset change. And the kids love this lesson just because it's so cool. And we hit a bunch of topics. But we're trying to do, try to make it as real world as possible. We're going to test out. I don't know how this is going to work. We're going to make grilled cheese in class in a couple of weeks and to test reactions involving heat and thermochemistry and specifics like, well, if we use cheddar, does cheddar melt the same way that mozzarella melts? Why? What about the two cheeses?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to smell fantastic in my classroom. It's going to be very messy. I don't know if it's going to work, but this is the first time I'm going to try it. But it's like, can I teach the chemistry? Can I teach the Q equals MC delta T? But instead of doing it with lead and water, couldn't I do this with cheese? So we're going to play it by ear.
All right. Well, it sounds like fun. I know you blog at markseigel.com, and just want to share that with the audience. We'll put a link up to that in the video as well. And congratulations on all the accolades and recognition that you've received. I see they're out there on the blog.
Thank you.
And, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us today. And thank you for serving on the board as an advisory member. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you out in the Flip Learning Today digital newsletter.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kelly. And also, not to plug my own thing, but you can always find my stuff at Dare to Chem, or I hashtag Chem is awesome.
Dare to Chem, right?
Yeah, TO Chem. And hashtag Chem is awesome because Chem is awesome. But you can always search for me on Chem is awesome and see all the very cool things that my students are doing.
All right. Well, thanks again.